From its inception in 1950, CEO membership has been selective, inviting only leaders of true quality from around the world. Every member is a CEO, chairman, or board member. Every member is a leader who experiences uncommon connections. These leaders among leaders represent 2,000 stories of enormous personal achievement. This is one of them.
Bo Callaway's life has been dedicated to 4 words: duty, honor, country, and excellence. And every single thing he's tried to do, he tried to do because it was his duty. He tried to do it in a way that helped his country. And he was deeply committed to doing it with as much excellence as he could possibly muster.
My father was born on April 2nd, 1927, in LaGrange in Georgia. He was the 3rd of 3 children.
Dad lived in a small town in rural Georgia. When he was 6, he had a little business where he sold sugar and coffee and grits to people who worked at Blue Springs Farms. He wrote a guy in Louisiana, he needed to buy some rice. And 2 weeks later, this guy shows up asking for Mr. Bo Callaway. And they said, "No, you mean Cason Callaway, Bo's dad." He said, "No, I mean Bo."
Biggest influence as far as business is my dad. He was just an amazing person.
He said, you know, it's a sin not to make a profit. You can't do anything for anybody if you don't make a profit. It's absolutely essential what you must do.
Dad was son of a textile magnate, and it afforded him a lot of learning opportunities.
My grandfather had wide access to people who were influential in every part of American life.
President Roosevelt would come to hang out at Blue Springs with Bo's father. He thought presidents of the United States just come to your house.
They had great wealth, but that wasn't their home. Their home was very down to earth. And yet they took their wealth and created something that was extraordinary magnitude.
Callaway Gardens is my grandfather's dream. It's 14,000 acres that's dedicated to giving people a chance to just reconnect to this beautiful living world that we've been given.
Callaway Gardens has been so much of my life from the day I got out of the Army.
He did want to come back to Callaway Gardens after Korea. He wanted to help his dad, who was having heart attacks. He wanted to get Callaway Gardens started. This was his home.
My job was not to do anything about the flowers. Mother handled that. People would ask my dad, "What's Bo's job?" He said, "Bo's job is to make more money than his mother can spend on flowers."
My father and grandfather both hatched the idea of having a resort that would support the garden. They built this lake, they built this golf course, they built the largest inland man-made beach in the world, and everybody came.
Not anything like Callaway Gardens. You can't say what's it like, because it's not like anything. Is it like a park? Yes. Is it like a hotel? Yes. It's like a lot of things, but you put it all together, there's nothing like it.
As long as I've known him, Bo has had a consistent drive to try to do things better, smarter, more effectively, with more creativity. And he has applied all of that energy for more than a half-century to making Callaway Gardens a unique facility.
I didn't start Callaway Gardens. I've had a lot to do with it, but when I'm handed that legacy, I better say, hey, I better make this work.
Bo is a very intelligent person, and he spends a fair amount of his life avoiding boredom by taking on new projects.
I think the politics was he just needed a bigger arena to move in. He's a perfect personality type for politics because glad handing is what he does naturally.
Somebody like Bo Callaway, who came out of a business background, who also had the military training at West Point, brought an excitement and an enthusiasm both in his congressional race in '64 and then in his governor's race in '66 that in many ways was the beginning of the modern Republican Party in Georgia.
Since the 1860s, there had not been a single person who had ever run for any statewide office as a Republican. I'm not saying never elected, never run.
I don't think he expected to win the congressional seat. I know he didn't. It was impossible, but he won it.
The night after the election, I woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning, woke up Beth and said, "Beth, do you realize this means we've got to move to Washington?" She says, "What am I going to do with the kids?" I said, "I don't know, but we better figure it out."
One of the strengths and weaknesses that Bo had as a politician was a very rigid sense of honor. He was very idealistic, and he had been elected, and he thought telling the truth really mattered.
The second day I was in Congress, I challenged the United States Speaker for telling a lie on the floor of the House. I was sitting next to Don Rumsfeld. I said, "Rummy, I went to school where they said you'll neither lie, cheat, nor steal, nor tolerate among us that do. We're going to tolerate the Speaker telling a lie in front of all these people." He said, "Well, I tell you one thing, I'm not going to challenge him." I came up and challenged the Speaker. I didn't call him a liar, but I let him know that I knew he had told a lie. You know, it's that important it was to me.
I know for a fact he was a very disruptive influence for 2 years in Congress, and nobody could intimidate him. And so he was quite happy to, even as a freshman, make waves that more senior members thought were suicidal. But he didn't care because he wasn't there to rise. He was there to try to change things, and he didn't mind that those who didn't want to be changed resented what he was doing.
He had spent 2 years in Washington as the Republican counterpoint to Democrats. In the South, he was the only counterpoint. Every time a newspaper had a quote from a Democrat, they had Bo as the alternative. He had more press than anybody in the South.
Bo Callaway, go Bo Callaway, now is the time to go Bo.
In '66, he ran for governor of Georgia. He had 49.5% of the vote. The other two guys had 42 and 8. But Georgia had a rule: if you didn't win a majority, it went to the House, and there was no Republican Party. It didn't exist. So he lost the governorship.
He rolled with the punches, but he didn't like to be punched.
There's an old Latin saying that someone gave me, and I have it over my door right now as I go to my bedroom: illegitimi non disputatum, which means don't let the bastards get you down. Went on to get appointed later as Secretary of the Army, which was, well, probably a better job than governor.
Can you imagine leaving the Army as a first lieutenant and coming back as a Secretary of the Army and being a West Point graduate? It's in your bones, and you really believe in it.
When I first met Bo, the Army was having a hard time. It was the middle of the Vietnam War. There were just all kinds of difficulties that the Army was suffering. And so here comes this fellow just with absolute enthusiasm, total dedication to the Army, loved the Army. And there was a tendency of people to hide things in the Pentagon, but Bo said, we're not going to do that.
He made every general wear a button saying, "I'm glad you asked," because he wanted to talk about what was going on in the Army.
We were building a helicopter that was to be carried in an airplane. And one day the folks designing our helicopter said, we've made a mistake, and the helicopter is 2 inches too large to fit in the airplane. I mean, this is really embarrassing. I went to see Bo to tell him, and I remember walking down the hall to his office. I said, this is where I find out if Bo really meant what he said. First thing Bo did was pick up the telephone and tell the members of the committee. And he said to them, you can kick us around if you want. We deserve it. But if you give us a chance, we'll fix it. And they gave us a chance, whereas if they had discovered it, I'm convinced they would have canceled the program. It was the Black Hawk program, and you see Black Hawks flying around the sky all the time now.
The draft expired on my watch, and my main job was to make the volunteer army work.
Bo went out with great energy and great aggressiveness to sell the idea first to the Congress and then to the country, to work out the details to make it a successful transition.
I was running the personnel totally out of the box, saying you can't treat volunteers like you used to treat draftees. Everything's different, change everything.
He insisted that the Congress approve funding to pay the soldiers a good pay and to have the education bill in there. He wanted the good, ambitious citizens of the country to be in the Army.
We had a higher quality Army, and a lot of people said it couldn't be done. And a lot of people think it still can't be done. And at first they said, well, it's the economy, that's why you're succeeding. Then it was, well, you're giving such great educational benefits, so that's why you're succeeding. A lot of the reason we were succeeding was Bo's leadership.
I don't think you can measure Bo Callaway by the kind of trajectory somebody gets who focuses all their existence on one achievement or one zone or one thing. I think you have to see Callaway as a man who was on a path, and a very unique path, and a path which had different doors opening to different gardens at different times.
We went to all the ski areas. I felt that there was no ski area I'd ever been to that treated guests like guests. And I complained enough that my wife Beth said one time, "You're so good, why don't you just buy a skier?" And I said, well, I will.
I think he saw it as a natural counterpart to Callaway Gardens. You had a summer vacation site at Callaway Gardens. You had a winter vacation site at Crested Butte. Once he got to be a businessman in Colorado, and he got to know people in Colorado, and he became a significant figure in Colorado politics, and people began to ask him to first be state chairman and then to run the party. And he played a major role in the resurrection of the Colorado Republican Party.
But in 1980, he ran for Senate in Colorado. He lost the Republican primary by 600 votes. And the next day, he had the other person's button on his lapel, supporting them. No sour grapes at all.
When he lost, he went sailing by himself, just to rethink his life. He came back and he decided to take up the concept of inner city baseball for disadvantaged young Americans as a way of giving them an outlet and giving them discipline and purpose that would enable them to rise and have a better future.
The program lasted 15 years plus and developed hundreds of young men who are now in college and graduated from college, who wouldn't probably have even finished high school if it had not been for that program.
We grew up with a phrase, if you decide to give graciously. No strings attached, no expectation of approval or reward, just give freely. He gives freely.
You ask about what motto we live by. George Washington said, "Let us raise a standard to which the wise and honest can repair. The event is in the hands of God."
He keeps his standard of morality and motivation, and how things turn out is how they turn out. That inherent desire for wisdom and honesty, integrity, he brought to every arena.
The breadth of things he's been involved in and the depth to which he's been good at it are unique. It's hard to describe the life he's led, but what a life.
Bo Callaway is as essentially American as anybody I've known in my lifetime. He has gotten up every morning trying to figure out what his duty is to his country, to his children, to his community. He has pursued that understanding with an energy, a passion, an intelligence, and a commitment that at times has to have involved enormous frustration and enormous disappointment. And yet, every single time he got back up. That is probably as close to the classic American as you could hope to be. And in that sense, I think Bo would say, well, this wasn't all he wanted to achieve, it was the life he wanted to live.